I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Griffin Hawk stood at the edge of his backyard, a cold beer in one hand, his phone in the other. 13 years of fatherhood had led to this moment, a sprawling suburban party with decorations that had cost more than his first car. 30 teenagers milled about, their voices a discordant symphony that grated against his ears. Behind his impassive expression, Griffin calculated. $850 for the new phone. $2,000 for the party. Another $500 for the custom cake with edible gold leaf that his wife Liana had insisted upon. Money that might as well have been set on fire. Griffin, come on. Piper's about to open your gift. Liana's voice carried across the yard, her yoga-toned body moving with practiced grace. Every movement designed to draw attention, to be admired. Griffin had once found it captivating. Now he saw only performance that he crossed the yard, nodding at parents he barely knew, Liana's friends mainly, people who came to her yoga classes or met her for coffee while he worked. People who smiled to his face and probably couldn't recall his name 5 minutes after he walked away. There you are, Liana said, her smile not reaching her eyes. Piper's been waiting. Griffin doubted that. His daughter, the girl he'd raised for 13 years, barely acknowledged his existence these days. He took his place among the crowd, standing slightly apart as Piper, with her hair perfectly styled and nails freshly manicured, tore through presents with the entitlement of someone who expected nothing less. When she reached the sleek box with his gift, Griffin felt a small flicker of hope. Perhaps this one thing would break through. He'd researched for weeks to find the exact model she wanted. Piper unwrapped it, her eyes widening slightly before settling back in a practiced indifference. She held up the phone for her friends to see. Cool, right? She said to the circle of teens around her. Then, cutting her eyes toward Griffin, she added with a smirk, Mom says if you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice. Laughter rippled through the group. Griffin saw Liana's mouth twitch, covering a smile. The comment hung in the air, a verbal slap that everyone witnessed and no one challenged. Griffin's face revealed nothing. Not the twist of pain in his chest. Not the final thread of connection snapping. Not the decision crystallizing in his mind. He simply lifted his phone, tapped the screen twice, and slipped it back into his pocket. The first domino had fallen. No one even looked his way. Who wants cake? Liana called, hand on Piper's shoulder. Both of them already turned away from him. Griffin stepped back, fading further into the background of his own life. They wouldn't notice his absence now, or the storm he was about to unleash. 3 months earlier, Griffin had first noticed the pattern. Liana's phone always face down. The slight jump when he entered a room unexpectedly. The gym sessions that stretched later and later into the evening. Working late again, Liana had asked one Tuesday in March, keys already in hand, dressed in workout clothes that seemed more suited for a club than for breaking a sweat. Griffin had nodded, his eyes on his laptop. System upgrade. I'll be home around 9. Don't wait up for me either. Doing extended sessions with Chase. Really trying to tone up for summer. Griffin had watched her leave, noting the extra care she'd taken with her makeup for a supposed workout. He'd waited 10 minutes, then accessed the home security system from his laptop. Another 10 minutes passed before he drove to their house and slipped inside. The house had been empty, quiet in a way that felt charged with possibility. Griffin moved with purpose, placing wireless cameras in strategic locations, the living room, kitchen, bedroom. Small, nearly invisible devices that connected directly to his private server. That night, he'd written code a program to mirror Liana's phone activities to his own device. When she'd asked him to update her phone the next day, claiming it was acting weird, he'd hidden his surprise and taken the opportunity. Should be all set, he'd told her, handing it back after installing his tracking software. You're the best, she'd replied, kissing his cheek before immediately turning to check her messages. Now, standing in his home office the night of Piper's birthday party, Griffin scrolled through months of collected data. Text messages between Liana and Chase Maddox, her personal trainer. Can't wait to feel your hands on me again. Griffin will be working late. Come over. You make me feel alive. Griffin's mouse moved to the next folder. GPS data showing Liana's phone at locations that weren't the yoga studio or gym. hotel addresses, restaurants in neighboring towns. He clicked on another file. Video footage from his own bedroom. Chase Maddox entering, Liana laughing as she pulled him inside. The date stamp showed it happening while Griffin was on a business trip. 3 days after he'd left, not even waiting for his absence to become routine, Griffin closed the laptop. He felt nothing but cold clarity. It wasn't just the affair. It was the calculated disrespect, the mockery, the way she turned Piper against him, using his own child as a weapon. He moved to the window, looking out at the perfect lawn of their perfect house in this perfect neighborhood. The facade was cracking, and he was done trying to hold it together. Griffin opened his closet, pulled out the black backpack he'd prepared weeks ago. Inside, essential documents, backup drive, emergency cash. The plans he'd been quietly putting into place were ready. Now, after Piper's comment, so was he. Griffin moved through the house like a ghost. The party had ended hours ago. Liana lay asleep in their bed, her face still bearing traces of makeup despite the skincare routine she typically followed religiously. She'd had too many glasses of wine, celebrating the success of the party, oblivious to the seismic shift happening under her feet. He placed the black backpack on the kitchen counter, positioned precisely in the center where it couldn't be missed. Beside it, a single sheet of paper with 7 words, "Congratulations. You got what you wanted." Griffin took nothing else, nothing they would immediately notice anyway. His clothes still hung in the closet. His toothbrush remained in the bathroom. Only his laptop and the contents of his hidden safe were gone. He stood at the doorway of Piper's room, looking at the sleeping form of the girl he'd thought was his daughter. 13 years of bedtime stories, school projects, and proud moments played through his mind, all built on a lie. He closed the door without entering. The night air was cool as Griffin slipped out of the house, the door locking behind him with a soft click. His car was parked 2 blocks away. He walked unhurriedly, feeling lighter with each step. By morning, he was settled in a furnished apartment he'd rented under an LLC 3 weeks earlier. At precisely 7:30 a.m., he initiated the sequence he'd programmed. His phone showed multiple notifications: bank account access, changed credit card permissions, updated utility status, payment processing, canceled streaming services, deactivated cellular service, restricted to primary account holder. At 9:23 a.m., his phone rang. Liana's name flashed on the screen. Griffin answered, but said nothing. "Griffin? Hello? I'm at Kroger, and my card was declined. What the hell is going on?" Her voice held confusion rather than concern. "Griffin." He waited, listening to her breathe, to the growing frustration in her sighs. "Griffin, this isn't funny. I have a full cart of groceries here. Piper needs." He ended the call with a tap of his finger. Then he blocked her number. His phone chimed with a text notification from a different number, the grocery store security system he'd hacked months ago, triggering when Liana's card was used. The camera feed showed her standing at the checkout, face flushed with embarrassment as she dug through her purse for another card. Each one declined in succession. Griffin switched to the home security feed. Inside their house, Piper paced in the living room, phone in hand. "Mom, what's going on? The Wi-Fi is out and my data isn't working." Griffin watched her tap frantically at her new phone, the $850 gift, now nothing but a sleek paperweight in her hands. Her frustration brought him no pleasure, but no pain either. Just the cold satisfaction of a plan executing perfectly. He closed the security app and opened his email. A message to his boss explaining his need for emergency leave had already been sent. A separate email to his lawyer had been delivered with documents attached. Griffin leaned back in his chair, gazing out at the city skyline from his new apartment. The life he'd built for 15 years had been dismantled in less than 15 minutes, and he was just getting started. The corner booth at Nolan's bar offered Griffin both privacy and a clear view of the entrance. He'd been coming here for 6 days straight, setting up his laptop during the quiet afternoon hours when few customers were around. Another coffee. Nolan Reyes slid into the seat across from him, setting down a fresh mug. At 43, Nolan carried himself with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin. The only person Griffin had ever truly called friend. "Thanks." Griffin didn't look up from his screen. "Still working on your project?" Nolan asked, his voice casual but eyes shrewd. Griffin turned the laptop slightly, showing rows of video thumbnails. Compiling evidence. Nolan whistled low. How long has this been going on? 9 months that I can prove. Probably longer. Griffin clicked on a file, bringing up footage of Chase Maddox's BMW pulling into his driveway. Timestamp, 2:17 p.m., 3 weeks earlier. The front door opening. Liana greeting him with a kiss that left no doubt about their relationship. And you've been collecting this the whole time? Jesus, Griffin. Why not just confront them? Griffin's fingers paused on the keyboard. What would that accomplish? A scene? Tears? Promises that mean nothing. He shook his head. This isn't about confrontation. It's about consequences. He clicked through more footage. Chase and Liana in the kitchen, drinking Griffin's imported whiskey. Chase laughing at something Liana said, his hand sliding up her thigh. Chase and Liana disappearing upstairs. How can you watch this stuff, man? Nolan looked away from the screen. I don't feel anything when I watch it, Griffin said, and it was true. The initial shock had calcified into something harder, colder. I'm just documenting patterns. He showed Nolan another clip. Chase and Liana in the living room, talking. Turn it up, Nolan said. Griffin adjusted the volume. Griffin is such a boring workaholic. Liana's voice filled the quiet booth. He has no idea what's happening right under his nose. Chase laughed. The IT genius can't even secure his own home. Or his own wife, Liana added, clinking her glass against Chase's. Griffin stopped the video. They've been doing this in my house for months. With my daughter upstairs. Christ. Nolan ran a hand over his face. What are you going to do? Griffin turned back to his laptop, fingers moving purposefully across the keyboard. I've been editing a compilation. The greatest hits, you might say. He showed Nolan a carefully cut video explicit enough to leave no doubt about the affair, but not so graphic as to be illegal to share. Key moments that prove the timeline, the deliberate nature of their betrayal. This goes live tomorrow morning, Griffin said. Anonymous account, posted to the neighborhood Facebook group and a local gossip blog. That'll blow up fast, Nolan said. Her yoga business will suffer. Yes. Griffin's voice remained flat. Chase's personal training clients might reconsider too, especially the married women whose husbands go to that gym. Nolan studied his friend's face. This is just the beginning, isn't it? Griffin closed the laptop. Chase is the appetizer. I have more substantial courses planned. The next morning, Griffin sat in his apartment watching the chaos unfold through social media. The video had spread through the neighborhood group like wildfire, with shocked comments multiplying by the minute. Isn't that Liana Hawk, the yoga instructor? OMG, that's Chase from Elite Fitness. Does her husband know? I can't believe they'd do this in someone's home. Griffin's phone buzzed with a notification from his home security system. Liana was screaming into her phone in the kitchen, mascara streaking down her face. Take it down, she shouted. Take the video down now, Chase. I don't care how. Fix this. Griffin switched to another feed. His email showed 5 cancellation notifications from Liana's yoga studio booking system. Then 10 more. Then dozens that a text from Nolan appeared on his screen. It's everywhere. Her sister just called the bar, asking if I knew where you were. Griffin didn't respond. Instead, he opened a different folder on his laptop. One labeled Brent Salazar. Phase 2 was ready to implement. Griffin parked his car half a block from his former home, baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. From this distance, he could see the house, but wouldn't be immediately recognizable to neighbors. He checked his watch, 1:17 p.m. Right on schedule, a silver Audi pulled into his driveway. Brent Salazar stepped out, straightening his designer polo shirt. At 41, Brent had the polished look of corporate success, the regional sales director for the wellness company, where Liana occasionally taught workshops. Married, father of 2, deacon at his church. The wholesome facade hiding the same rotten core. Griffin raised his camera, capturing Brent looking nervously around before approaching the front door. It opened before he could knock. Liana pulled him inside quickly. Griffin lowered the camera and checked his phone. The GPS tracking data from Liana's phone confirmed what he was seeing. This wasn't the first time. Analyzing her text messages and location history had revealed a pattern going back 4 months. He'd compiled a spreadsheet. Dates, times, locations. Correlation between Brent's business trips and times when Liana had told Griffin she was attending intensive teacher training weekends. Hotel receipts he'd found in her email. Conversations extracted from her phone. Miss feeling you inside me. My husband suspects nothing. We need to be careful. Brent's perfect husband reputation is everything in this town. Griffin started his car and drove 3 blocks to a small cafe with reliable Wi-Fi. He ordered coffee and opened his laptop, connecting to the home security cameras. In his living room, Brent held Liana while she cried about the video of her and Chase, about her collapsing business, about how Griffin had cut off all financial access. He can't just disappear and leave me with nothing, Liana said, wiping her eyes. I've called his work, his family. No one will tell me anything. We'll figure out, Brent assured her, hands sliding under her shirt. But we have the house to ourselves now, and I only have an hour before my next meeting. Griffin closed the laptop. He didn't need to see more. He had what he needed: confirmation that Brent was fully aware of Liana's marriage and chose to participate in destroying it anyway. He pulled out his phone and brought up a contact he'd added recently, Maribel Salazar. He'd found her through social media. Brent's devoted wife, mother to his children, community volunteer. The picture-perfect spouse about to have her world shattered. Griffin hesitated, finger hovering over the call button. This step would impact not just Brent and Liana, but innocent bystanders, Maribel and her children. The collateral damage gave him pause, but only briefly. Maribel deserved to know the truth about the man she'd built her life around. He pressed call instead of sending the footage directly. This part required a personal touch. Hello. A woman's voice answered, cautious with the unknown number. Mrs. Salazar? My name is Griffin Hawk. I think we need to talk about your husband. Griffin sat in the sterile waiting room of LabCorp, hands perfectly still on his knees. 2 weeks had passed since Piper's birthday party. The words still echoed in his mind. Mom says if you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice. The comment had been the catalyst, but the doubt had taken root months earlier. Little things that had never quite added up: Piper's light brown eyes when both he and Liana had blue. The way her facial features seemed to shift as she grew older, revealing expressions he couldn't place in either family line. Mr. Hawk, the technician appeared with a tablet. We've processed the samples you submitted. The results are available in your online account now. Griffin nodded, already opening the Labs app on his phone. He'd created the account under a business name, using his IT skills to ensure privacy. The paternity test had been conducted using a strand of Piper's hair from her brush and his own DNA sample. He entered his password and opened the report, skimming past the scientific terminology to the conclusion. Probability of paternity, 0%. Griffin stared at the screen, feeling the final piece click into place. 13 years of birthdays, school events, and midnight fevers, all for a child who had never been as he thought. He'd be prepared for this moment, that the suspicion would have cushioned the blow. Instead, the confirmation hit with stunning force, a dam breaking in his chest. Griffin sat motionless, breathing steadily through the pain until it transmuted into something harder and more useful. Rage. Who was Piper's biological father? An old boyfriend? Someone Liana had met at a bar? The timing would have been early in their marriage, when Griffin had been working 60-hour weeks to build his career, to provide the life Liana had said she wanted. It didn't matter now. What mattered was that every foundation of his life had been built on lies. His marriage, his fatherhood, the future he'd planned and saved for. Griffin left the lab and drove to Nolan's bar, finding his friend behind the counter preparing for the evening rush. Results came back, Griffin said, sliding onto a stool. Nolan looked up, reading Griffin's expression. Shit, not yours, not mine. Griffin's voice was flat. Never was. Nolan poured 2 fingers of whiskey and slid the glass across the bar. I'm sorry, man. Griffin didn't touch the drink. I don't want sympathy. I want to finish this. What's left to do? You've already blown up her affair with Chase. You're about to expose Brent to his wife. It's not enough. Griffin's eyes were cold. They took everything from me. My family. My home. 13 years of my life. I'm going to take everything from them, too. Nolan studied his friend. This anger, it'll burn you up inside, Griffin. It's not anger. Griffin finally reached for the whiskey, taking a small sip. It's purpose. Later that night, in his apartment, Griffin reviewed the legal documents his lawyer had prepared. Cassie Porter was known for her aggressive approach to divorce cases, her refusal to settle for less than her clients deserved. She'd taken Griffin's case with gleeful enthusiasm after seeing the evidence he'd compiled. "This is the cleanest case I've seen in years," she told him during their initial consultation. No jury in the state would side with her. Griffin added the DNA test results to the file. Then he opened a new document and began typing a formal letter relinquishing all parental rights and responsibilities to Piper. The girl he'd raised as a daughter had never truly been his, neither biologically nor, it seemed, emotionally. He felt a moment of doubt. Was he punishing a child for her mother's sins? Mom says if you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice. No, Piper had made her choice. She'd chosen Liana's values, Liana's worldview. She'd chosen to become the kind of person who would cruelly mock the man who had raised her in front of an audience for casual entertainment. Griffin finished the document and sent it to Cassie, then turned his attention back to Brent and Maribel Salazar. Their meeting was scheduled for tomorrow. The next domino was about to fall. The cafe Griffin had chosen was 30 miles from town, minimizing the chance of being recognized. He arrived 15 minutes early, securing a corner table with a view of the entrance. At precisely 2 p.m., Maribel Salazar walked in. She was attractive in an understated way, dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, minimal makeup, clothes that spoke of comfort rather than fashion. The opposite of Liana's carefully curated appearance. Griffin stood as she approached. "Mrs. Salazar, thank you for coming." Her eyes were red-rimmed, but her voice was steady. "You said you had evidence about my husband. Show me. No pleasantries. No small talk." Griffin respected that. He motioned for her to sit and opened his laptop. "I want to be clear," he said. "I take no pleasure in this, but I believe you deserve the truth. Just show me," she repeated. Griffin turned the screen toward her. He'd edited the footage of Brent and Liana carefully enough to prove the affair beyond doubt, but cutting away before anything too explicit. The timestamps were clear, showing multiple days, multiple encounters. Maribel watched in silence, her face growing paler with each new clip. When the video ended, she closed the laptop with a decisive snap. "How long have you known?" she asked. "About Brent specifically?" "For months." "About my wife's activities in general?" "Longer. And you've been gathering evidence all this time?" Instead of confronting them, there was something like accusation in her voice. Griffin met her gaze. Confrontations lead to denials. Denials lead to gaslighting. I needed irrefutable proof. For the divorce. For justice. Griffin kept his voice level. "They didn't just have an affair, Mrs. Salazar. They deliberately humiliated me. Made me a joke. Turned my daughter against me." He paused. "A daughter who I recently discovered isn't biologically mine." Maribel's eyes widened. "Oh my God. So yes, I gathered evidence. And I'm making sure there are consequences." Griffin leaned forward slightly. "I'm not after your sympathy, but I thought you should know who you're married to." Maribel was silent for a long moment, hands clasped tightly together on the table. Then, "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. The information is yours to use or ignore as you see fit." She studied him, skepticism clear in her expression. "That's it? You tracked me down, showed me this devastating evidence, and want nothing in return." Griffin considered his words carefully. "I believe in consequences, Mrs. Salazar. Your husband helped destroy my family. I won't pretend I'd be disappointed to see his life similarly impacted. You want me to ruin him? I want him to experience the fallout of his choices. Whether that happens through your actions or mine doesn't matter to me." Maribel took a deep breath. "Do you have a copy of that video I could take?" Griffin handed her a flash drive. "Everything's on here." She took it, her fingers brushing his. 13 years raising someone else's child. Her voice had softened slightly. "I can't imagine. It's the lies that are unforgivable," Griffin said. "Not just hiding the truth. but creating an entire false reality for someone to live in, making them think they're loved when they're just being used. Maribel nodded slowly. I understand that better than you might think. Her expression hardened. What are your next steps? I have a lawyer preparing for nuclear divorce. No settlements. No mercy. Is that enough for you? The legal victory? Griffin studied her face, seeing something there he recognized, not just anger, but a deep, clarifying rage that burned cold rather than hot. What did you have in mind? He asked. Maribel leaned forward. Brent has been hiding money. I found evidence last year, but convinced myself it was for a surprise vacation or something equally innocent. She gave a bitter laugh. I think your wife might be involved. They've been working on some wellness retreat scam together, taking investments from people for a property that doesn't exist. Griffin felt the first genuine smile in months tug at his lips. Mrs. Salazar, I think this could be the beginning of a very productive partnership. Call me Maribel, she said, extending her hand. And let's burn it all down. Griffin nursed a club soda at the far end of Nolan's bar, laptop open to financial records he'd been tracing. The web of offshore accounts linking Brent and Liana was more extensive than he'd initially thought, revealing a pattern of financial fraud going back nearly 2 years. Heads up, Nolan said quietly, passing behind him. Your daughter just walked in. Griffin didn't correct him about Piper not being his daughter. He closed his laptop and turned to see the 13-year-old scanning the bar, looking lost and much younger than she had at her birthday party. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail instead of the perfect styling she usually insisted upon. She spotted him and approached hesitantly, stopping a few feet away. How did you find me? Griffin asked. I followed Mom here yesterday. She was looking for you. Piper shifted uncomfortably. She left when that bartender said he didn't know you. Griffin glanced at Nolan, who shrugged apologetically. I came back and asked him myself. Piper continued. He wouldn't tell me anything, but I waited outside and saw you come in today. A hint of her usual defiance flashed. I'm not stupid. What do you want, Piper? She seemed taken aback by his direct question, by the absence of warmth in his voice. You have to come home, she said. Everything's falling apart. The power got shut off yesterday. Mom's a complete mess. She can't stop crying. Piper's voice cracked. We need you. Griffin observed her clinically. The fear in her eyes was real, but there was calculation too. Piper had always been skilled at manipulating emotions when she wanted something. Are those your mother's words, or yours? He asked. Mine. I miss you, Dad. A tear slid down her cheek. I'm sorry about what I said at my party. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did. Griffin kept his voice even. You meant to hurt me. You succeeded. Congratulations. It was just a stupid joke. Piper protested. Mom and I joke about stuff like that all the time. I know. Griffin took a sip of his club soda. That's part of the problem. Piper stepped closer, reaching for his arm. Please come home. I'll do better, I promise. No more mean jokes. It's too late, Piper. What do you mean it's too late? You're my dad. She was crying fully now, mascara streaming down her face. Griffin felt something twist in his chest, muscle memory of parental concern, quickly suppressed. When you laughed at me that night, you chose your side. Stay with her. But I'm your daughter. Griffin stared at her, his expression emotionless. No, you're not. Piper froze, her face slackening with shock. What are you talking about? DNA doesn't lie, Piper. I'm not your biological father. Griffin picked up his laptop, sliding it into his bag. Ask your mother who is. You're lying, Piper whispered. You're just saying that to hurt me. I've never lied to you, Piper. Unlike your mother. Griffin stood. I have to go. You can't just leave me. Piper grabbed his arm. Even if what you're saying is true, you raised me. You've been my dad for 13 years. And in those 13 years, did you ever truly see me? Value me? Griffin gently removed her hand. Or was I just a blank check, the chauffeur, the background character in your life? That's not fair. Life rarely is. Griffin nodded to Nolan and headed for the door. Dad, please. Piper called after him, her voice breaking. I love you. Griffin paused at the door, but didn't turn around. You should go home, Piper. Your mother needs you. He left her crying at the bar, ignoring the stares of the few afternoon patrons. Outside, the air felt too thick to breathe. He made it to his car before the weight on his chest became unbearable. Griffin sat behind the wheel, gripping it until his knuckles turned white. He'd held onto his control through everything: the discovery of Liana's affairs, the DNA test, the calculated dismantling of his life. But Piper's tears threatened to crack his resolve that he started the car. There was no going back. The girl he'd loved as a daughter had been an unwitting accomplice in her mother's deception. Perhaps she was a victim too, but he couldn't save her without drowning himself. Griffin drove away, leaving Piper behind, the final connection to his old life severed. The conference room at Cassie Porter's law office overlooked the county courthouse, a strategic choice, Griffin suspected, to remind clients of the battlefield that awaited if negotiations failed. Not that there had been any real negotiations in his case. "They're asking for a settlement meeting," Cassie announced, striding into the room in a perfectly tailored suit, tablet in hand. At 46, she moved with the confidence of someone who rarely lost. "Liana's lawyer seems to think we'll be amenable to a reasonable division of assets." Griffin looked up from the documents he'd been reviewing. "What did you tell them?" "That we'll see them in court." Cassie smiled, sharp as a blade. "Their counter-evidence is pathetic. One letter from Liana's therapist claiming emotional abandonment. A statement from her yoga studio partner about how hard she worked to build her business." She snorted. "Meanwhile, we have video evidence of multiple affairs, financial records showing she was diverting her money to secret accounts, and a DNA test proving she lied about paternity for 13 years. What about Piper?" Griffin asked, keeping his voice neutral. That Cassie's expression softened slightly. "The paternity revelation complicates the custody situation, but given her age, the court would likely consider her preferences anyway. I've already filed to terminate parental rights." Cassie studied him. "Are you sure about that, Griffin? Despite everything, you raised her." "I'm sure." Griffin turned back to the documents. "When is the court date?" "Next Tuesday. Judge Harriet Monroe." Cassie sat across from him. "She's known for being tough, but fair. Old school values big on marital fidelity and parental responsibility." "Perfect." The courtroom was smaller than Griffin had expected, the wood paneling giving it a closed-in feeling that amplified every sound. He sat beside Cassie at the plaintiff's table, posture straight, expression neutral. Across the aisle, Liana whispered urgently to her attorney, a nervous-looking man whose suit seemed a size too large. Piper wasn't present. Juvenile court matters were handled separately, and given the paternity issue, the judge had ordered those proceedings sealed. Judge Monroe entered, and the formalities began. Opening statements, initial filings. Griffin noticed Liana dabbing at her eyes periodically, the performance clearly aimed at generating sympathy. Then Cassie Porter went to work. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence package A, documenting Mrs. Hawk's multiple extramarital affairs." She presented the carefully edited video evidence, along with text messages, hotel receipts, and GPS data. As you can see, these weren't isolated incidents, but an ongoing pattern of infidelity involving at least 2 men over the past year. The judge reviewed the materials, her expression growing increasingly grim. "These were recorded in the marital home." "Yes, Your Honor." "Using legally installed security cameras." Liana's attorney jumped up. "Your Honor, we contend that these recordings were an invasion of my client's privacy." Judge Monroe fixed him with a cold stare. "In her marital home, which her husband owned and maintained, while she was engaging in adulterous behavior." "Sit down, counselor." Cassie continued methodically, presenting financial evidence, next the hidden accounts, the diverted funds, the pattern of financial deception. "Furthermore, Your Honor, we have evidence that Mrs. Hawk was involved in a fraudulent business scheme with one of her paramours, Brent Salazar." She presented the documents Griffin and Maribel had compiled. They were soliciting investments for a non-existent wellness retreat. Liana's face had gone pale, her eyes darting to her lawyer in panic. "Finally, Your Honor," Cassie said, her voice softening for maximum impact, "we must address the most egregious deception." She submitted the DNA test results. "Mr. Hawk recently discovered that the child he has raised as his daughter for 13 years is not biologically his. Mrs. Hawk deliberately concealed this fact for the duration of their marriage. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Judge Monroe's face hardened as she reviewed the lab results. "Does Mrs. Hawk contest these findings?" the judge asked that Liana's attorney conferred with her briefly. "No, Your Honor, but my client wishes to emphasize that Mr. Hawk has been the only father figure in the child's life, and that severing that relationship would be deeply traumatic. Yet your client had no qualms about lying to both her husband and her daughter for 13 years. Judge Monroe interrupted. "Nor about turning the child against Mr. Hawk, according to witness statements." She set down the papers with a decisive gesture. "I've heard enough. We'll take a 30-minute recess, and then I'll deliver my ruling." Griffin remained seated while others filed out, feeling strangely detached from the proceedings. The evidence, the arguments, it was all playing out exactly as he'd planned, yet the victory felt hollow. When court resumed, Judge Monroe wasted no time. "In the matter of Hawk versus Hawk, this court finds overwhelmingly in favor of the plaintiff. Mrs. Hawk's pattern of deception, infidelity, and financial misconduct has been thoroughly documented." She adjusted her glasses. "The court orders the following: 0 alimony. Mrs. Hawk is to vacate the marital home within 30 days. All joint assets are awarded to Mr. Hawk, as the court finds Mrs. Hawk's contributions to the marriage were vastly outweighed by her deceptions. Regarding the minor child, the court acknowledges Mr. Hawk's petition to terminate parental rights. Given the DNA evidence and the child's age, the court grants this petition. Mr. Hawk will have no further legal or financial obligations to the child." The judge looked directly at Griffin. "Mr. Hawk, do you wish to make a statement for the record regarding your decision to terminate parental rights?" Griffin stood. "Yes, Your Honor. I wish to state that I am not biologically or emotionally connected to her. No further contact." His words hung in the courtroom. Liana made a choked sound, somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Judge Monroe nodded once. "So ordered. Court is adjourned." As Griffin gathered his documents, he caught Liana's eyes across the aisle. Her face was streaked with tears, but it wasn't sadness he saw in her expression, it was fury. The mask had finally dropped. "You bastard," she hissed. "You've destroyed everything. Are you happy now?" Griffin really looked at her for the first time in months. The woman he'd loved, built a life with, planned a future around. A stranger. Happiness was never the goal, he said quietly. Just truth. He turned and walked out of the courtroom, Cassie at his side. "Impressive win," she said as they descended the courthouse steps. "Though I have to say, Griffin, your composure is almost unnerving. Most clients show some emotion at this stage: relief, vindication, something." Griffin looked out at the city street, at people going about their ordinary lives. "I feel like I've been underwater for months. Everything muted, distant." He turned to her. "Is it over now?" Cassie smiled. "The divorce is settled. But something tells me you're not quite finished yet." She was right. There was still one more domino to fall. The cafe where Griffin had first met Maribel had become their regular meeting place. He arrived to find her already seated, a folder on the table between them. "I've compiled everything," she said without preamble. Bank statements, transaction records, emails about the investment opportunity. Brent wasn't as careful as he thought. Her smile held no warmth. "Men rarely are. Your divorce proceedings?" "Moving forward." My lawyer was impressed with how thoroughly I documented everything. Said it was like I'd been taking lessons from a professional. Griffin inclined his head slightly. "The offshore account." Maribel slid the folder toward him. "Cayman Islands. I found the access information in Brent's safe. They've been moving money through it for at least 18 months. Over $300,000 from what I can tell." Griffin opened the folder, scanning the documents. "Some of these transactions match withdrawals from my accounts." He touched a specific line. "This one was the day before Piper's birthday. Liana told me she needed extra money for the party. It went straight to the Caymans." Maribel's voice was tight with anger. They were planning to run away together. "Brent told me he was going to a sales conference next month. I found airline tickets to Grand Cayman on his laptop." Griffin closed the folder. "Are you prepared for what happens next?" The IRS investigation won't just affect Brent. There will be public attention, questions from friends and family. You mean am I prepared to blow up my comfortable life? Maribel's eyes flashed. Brent destroyed that the moment he decided to betray me. I'd rather stand in the ashes of truth than live in a palace of lies. Griffin nodded, recognizing the same cold resolve that had carried him through his own ordeal. Then let's proceed. That evening, from his apartment, Griffin used his IT skills to create an anonymous digital trail connecting Brent and Liana's fraudulent activities to their offshore account. He carefully constructed the evidence to appear as though it had been discovered during routine financial monitoring. The tip to the IRS was equally anonymous, a detailed report with just enough specifics to trigger a full investigation, but obscured enough to hide his own involvement. Are you sure about this? Nolan asked, watching from Griffin's couch. Tax fraud investigations, federal charges, this is another level. They committed the crimes, Griffin said, fingers moving steadily across the keyboard. I'm just ensuring they face the consequences. And Piper? This will affect her too. Griffin's hands stilled momentarily. She's not my responsibility anymore. Liana made that decision 13 years ago. But it's done, Griffin said, pressing enter on the final submission. Now we wait. The wait was shorter than expected. 3 days later, Griffin watched from his car as federal agents entered Brent's office building. That same afternoon, another team arrived at what had once been Griffin's home, where Liana was still living until the eviction deadline. The local news picked up the story within hours. Federal authorities have raided the offices of wellness company regional director Brent Salazar as part of an investigation into alleged tax evasion and fraud. Sources say Salazar and yoga instructor Liana Hawk are suspected of running an investment scam targeting local wellness enthusiasts while hiding funds in offshore accounts. We'll bring you more as this story develops. Griffin switched off the news and checked his phone. A text from Maribel showed a screenshot of a termination email from Brent's company, citing the investigation and irreparable damage to the company's reputation. A separate notification showed Liana's attempt to access their once joint bank account, now firmly under Griffin's control. The system logged her failed attempts, her increasing desperation evident in the frequency of the tries. Griffin felt no triumph, no joy at their downfall. Only a quiet certainty that justice, cold and impersonal, had finally been served. 1 month after the IRS raid, Griffin stood at the window of his downtown apartment, watching the city lights come alive as dusk settled. The space reflected his current state, modern, minimalistic, without remnants of his past life. No family photos, no sentimental objects. A clean slate. The door buzzer interrupted his thoughts. It's Nolan. Brought beer. Griffin buzzed him up. Nolan arrived minutes later, a six-pack in hand. Place is looking good, Nolan said, setting the beer on the kitchen counter. Still rocking the bachelor minimalism, I see. I have what I need. Griffin took a beer, gesturing for Nolan to sit. How's the new job? After the divorce, Griffin had accepted a position with a cybersecurity firm in the city, a fresh start, away from the memories and connections of his old life. Challenging, in a good way. Griffin sat across from his friend. What brings you by? Nolan hesitated. Thought you might want an update. Word around town is Liana's been evicted. She's staying at the Sunrise Motel on Highway 9. Griffin showed no reaction. And Piper, bouncing between friends' houses from what I hear. Liana can't afford to keep her in her fancy private school, so she's enrolled at Jefferson Public. Griffin took a slow sip of his beer. The IRS investigation, still ongoing. Brent's looking at serious charges: tax evasion, wire fraud, investment fraud. Liana might get some leniency if she cooperates, but she's definitely implicated. Nolan studied his friend's face. You've been following all this anyway, haven't you? Griffin didn't answer directly. Consequences have a way of finding everyone eventually. So, Nolan leaned forward. No regrets. Griffin considered the question. The systematic dismantling of his former life. The cold precision with which he'd executed his plan. The people caught in the collateral damage, particularly Piper. None, he said finally. Some cancers need to be cut out root and branch. Nolan nodded slowly, not entirely convinced but unwilling to push further. Mail came for you at the bar. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. Looks official. Griffin took it, recognizing the law firm's letterhead. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the final divorce decree, officially filed and registered. At the bottom, a handwritten note from Cassie Porter, all matters settled. You owe nothing. Griffin set the paper down on the coffee table, feeling a weight lift that he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. It was truly over. So what now? Nolan asked. New job, new place, new life. Now, Griffin looked around the apartment, the space he'd created for himself, uncontaminated by lies or betrayal. Now I live on my own terms. Later, after Nolan had left, Griffin sat alone in the quiet of his apartment. He'd expected to feel something more definitive at this moment, closure, perhaps, or satisfaction. Instead, there was simply space, room to breathe, room to begin again. His phone chimed with an alert, an automated notification from a system he'd set up to monitor certain accounts. Liana had attempted to access her old Facebook profile, the one filled with carefully curated images of their perfect family life. Griffin opened his laptop and watched her digital movements in real time. She was scrolling through old photos, vacations, holidays, Piper's birthdays. The fabricated highlights of a life that had never been what it appeared. She had left a comment on one photo, Griffin, Liana, and Piper smiling in front of their house. 3 years earlier, we were a beautiful family. Griffin's finger hovered over the keyboard. With a few keystrokes, he could send her a message. Tell her what he really thought about their beautiful family. The lies it was built on, the hollow core at its center. Instead, he pressed a different key combination. A system message appeared on Liana's screen. You are blocked from this account. Griffin closed the laptop. Outside his window, the city continued its rhythmic pulse of lights and movement. Inside, he sat in the quiet aftermath of destruction, finding an unexpected peace in the ruins. Liana Hawk sat on the edge of the sagging mattress in room 17 of the Sunrise Motel. The place smelled of industrial cleaner, barely masking decades of cigarette smoke. A far cry from the pristine, lavender-scented bedroom of her former home. Her phone, a prepaid model bought with some of her last cash, displayed a series of unanswered texts from Piper. Mom, can I stay at Zoe's again tonight? Ashley's mom wants to know, when you're picking me up, that I need money for school lunch tomorrow. Mom, are you there? Liana set the phone down, too exhausted to respond. The last month had been a blur of federal interviews, legal warnings, and collapsing opportunities. Her yoga clients had disappeared overnight. Her wellness company connections had severed all ties. Even her sister had stopped taking her calls after the news broke about the investment scheme. Griffin had been more thorough than she could have imagined. The gentle, predictable husband she'd taken for granted had revealed himself to be something else entirely. A glacier, cold, patient, and ultimately devastating. She picked up the phone again, ignoring Piper's messages to open Facebook. Her profile was still active, though she rarely posted now. Too ashamed to face the judgment, the gossip, the fall from social grace. Liana scrolled back through time, past the raid, past the divorce, into the carefully curated images of her former life. There they were, the vacation in Cabo, the Christmas with the enormous tree, Piper's 11th birthday party with the pony. She stopped on a photo taken in front of their house, Griffin standing slightly apart from her, and Piper, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. How had she never noticed that before? The distance already growing between them. Captured on camera for posterity, that Liana's fingers trembled as she typed a comment. We were a beautiful family. As soon as she posted it, a system message appeared. You are blocked from this account. Her breath caught. Of course, Griffin would have anticipated this moment, this weakness. Another door slammed in her face. Liana's hand shook as she dropped the phone onto the bed. The silence of the motel room pressed in around her, no hum of expensive appliances, no distant sound of Piper's music or television, just the occasional car passing on the highway outside. She moved to the window, pulling back the thin curtain to look out at the parking lot. Her old Mercedes, the last remnant of her previous life, sat alone under the flickering motel sign. The IRS had permitted her to keep it, for now, though the insurance would soon lapse. Another countdown ticking toward inevitable loss. The enormity of what had happened, what she had lost, crashed over her in waves. The beautiful house, the social standing, the financial security, all gone. And for what? Moments of excitement with Chase, who had disappeared at the first sign of trouble. A fantasy future with Brent, now facing federal charges. She had gambled Griffin's steady devotion for fleeting thrills and lost everything in the process. Returning to the bed, Liana picked up her phone again, scrolling to a different contact. She hesitated, then pressed call. "This is Griffin Hawk. Leave a message." His voice controlled. Neutral sent an unexpected pang through her chest. "Griffin, it's me." Liana fought to keep her voice steady. "I know you hate me. You have every right to. But Piper needs." She faltered. "She's just a child, Griffin. Whatever I did, whatever you think of me, she doesn't deserve." The call cut off abruptly. Disconnected. Or perhaps he had been listening and hung up. She would never know. Liana stared at the phone in her hand, the screen already dimming. She tried calling back. A computerized voice informed her the number was no longer in service. Another door closed. Another bridge burned. Outside, the motel sign flickered once, twice, then went dark, a power outage or blown fuse, plunging her room into sudden, complete darkness. In the blackness, Liana Hawk sat alone with the consequences of her choices, invisible tears tracking silently down her face.